Executive Committee meeting follows the visit of the National Working Committee to engage with regional structures and branches in the 5 regions of the province. NUMSA says the high cost of living is threatening livelihoods of the working class in South Africa, including the mooted 2% VAT increase.
This is the most bizarre story I've ever heard of for my whole 42 years in this profession. I've never heard or seen something like this.
The Health Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, says he's shocked following the gruesome killing of a mental health patient at Philadelphia Hospital in Denelton, Limpopo. The patient was allegedly killed by another patient after a fight erupted in their ward. A very warm welcome to the week ahead. We are live with you from our SABC News studios here in Johannesburg for the next 2 hours. Good afternoon. I'm Mariketa Mtlabe. If you'd like to participate, please give us a call to share your thoughts or pose questions. The number is 011-714-0680 or 81 or 82. As always, it's wonderful to have you with us. We start here. An off-duty JMPD officer was fatally shot on Friday while she was in her car outside her home in Alexandra. Following the shooting, she was rushed to the Edenvale Hospital where she succumbed to her injuries. The officer's son and a bystander were also shot at the scene and rushed to hospital. The reason for the shooting remains unknown for now. Niratlagoza has more.
The family of Judith Makwela, a JMPD officer who was shot and killed outside her home here in Alexandra, is reeling in pain and also seeking answers. The family says as they try to cope with what happened, they want to know the motive behind her shooting. What we know now is that Makwela was outside her home with her nephew when the incident happened. She was rushed to hospital. However, she succumbed to her injuries. Joining me now is the daughter of Makwela, just to speak to us, of course, about how they are coping with the incident and perhaps what she knows, because she was saying that she was outside the gate when this incident happened. Of course, right now she's quickly taking a call just before she speaks to us, but let me just welcome her. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. I know it's not the best time right now. It's hard with what happened to your mother, but you were telling us that you were outside when this ordeal happened. What can you say? What did you witness about this?
So I was not really outside. I was in the yard. So this happened outside. So after the incident happened, I just saw my mom down and I only managed to... So yeah, I only saw when my mom was down. That's when I went out. I found her down. The culprits were just running there down.
And how are you coping since Friday? Because when we got here, you were talking about your anger, towards what happened.
Yeah, it's tough because I relied on my mother big time. She was the only parent I had. My dad passed away 5 years ago. He was also shot. So I wasn't expecting such from my mother, because my mother was a helper, a mother to everyone. She was everything to everyone. She was just not a mother to me, but a mother to everyone in our community. Yeah.
And now that you are saying the alleged perpetrators or the alleged shooters were running as you came out, what do you want to see being done? What investigations do you want to see perhaps? Have the police, in fact, even come to your house perhaps?
Yeah, they did come to my house and take some questionings and some stories. The forensic, they came for the scene. They saw everything. They took the cartridges and Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I know this is basically a sad moment for you and the rest of your family, but we appreciate that you managed to speak to us this morning. There you have it, the daughter of the JMPD officer who was shot and killed outside her home. Of course, this is not an easy time for the family. She's also having it hard. One thing she was saying is that the sad part is that now she has no parents. Of course, we will speak to police to understand how far they are with investigations regarding this case, but the JMPD also did send its condolences to the family and saying they are saddened at what happened to one of their own.
What a devastating story there. Now to this, the ANC's top officials are meeting in Bloemfontein in the Free State today. The party's National Executive Committee meeting follows the visit of the National Working Committee to engage with regional structures and branches in the 5 regions of the province. The aim of the 3-day visit to the province is to assess governance, strengthen organizational structures, and to align regional efforts to the ANC's renewal agenda. For more on this, let's cross live to SABC News reporter Ishmael Mudiba. Ishmael, a very good afternoon to you. Talk to us. Whom have you seen and what are you hearing at the party's NEC's meeting at this moment?
Well, good afternoon, Maheketa. Well, at this stage, I can talk about the national chairperson who was the first person to arrive here, followed by other leaders, Maropeni Ramokgopa, the ANC DSG, as well as ANC Treasurer General Dr. Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa, as well as the Nomvula Mokwanyane and the Deputy President of the ANC. The Deputy President of the ANC, yeah, those are the ones that have made their way inside the venue that you see behind us. The meeting is still on, and we are told that later on, around 2 o'clock, the very same leaders, they will be meeting with the National Working Committee of the ANC, and it will be then at that particular time that they will be able to brief us of the deliberations that are happening inside. For now, it's still a closed session meeting with the leaders of the ANC, discussing about the challenges that are facing the ANC in the region, in the province, and mapping the way forward. We know that the challenges are, there are challenges in various municipalities in the province. Various leaders of the ANC have been meeting with the leaders and structures of the ANC to find out what those challenges are. So I guess here in this particular meeting, that is when the feedback meeting will be taking place to iron out those issues, and that's when we'll be actually be able to be informed of what is the outcome of those decisions. But a proper press briefing, I'm told, or we are told, that will be happening tomorrow, as this will be a 3-day meeting. This, they are saying, it's a normal ANC ANC meeting that takes in between during their working hours, or the in between the process of the ANC. But as of now, things are quiet. It's mainly the leaders of the ANC, the president of the ANC, the deputy president of the ANC, the DSG, the treasurer, and the chairman of the ANC that are locked behind the building behind us. Maheketa?
And Ishmael, I know you've been covering some of the stories there, especially service delivery related stories in that province. What are some of the issues that the residents would really love to see being resolved amid all these kind of meetings?
Well, the regions or the places, they differ. Like, for instance, over the past few weeks, the leaders of the ANC in the Nala region, they've been complaining about cooperation between their cooperation of with the mayor and the executive, the mayor and the municipal manager and the chief financial officer. They've been saying that they want them out of office because they are saying they are not serving the purpose of ensuring that there is service delivery in the area, and to make sure that the community or their message is heard. They made, I think, for about 2 days, the learners were not going to school for this matter to be resolved. These leaders, they wanted to ensure that the message get heard. And the ANC in the province, subsequent to that, they went to that region, in the Nala region, where they spoke to the leaders. And I'm told that there are time frames where the issues that were raised had to be resolved this coming week, where follow-up meetings will be held. Then you go to your Machabeng, as well in the Lujule Putswa, where there is a lack of service delivery. The community members are saying since the suspension of Mayor Khalipa earlier last year, and he's been convicted of assault, they're saying there is no service delivery. Things have gone backwards since, well, he's no longer in the picture. But there is a division. There are those who say they don't want him in the office, and there are those who want him back in the office. So the ANC is another matter that they need to look at, to say, here is the issue with the Machabeng, and the issue of step aside, where and how does it apply? So issues in general in the province, it's all about service delivery, the performance of the ANC. They want things happening, and they want to make sure that services are rendered to the people. But as it has been said, trying to compare the situation of the Free State and KZN and Gauteng to say, will the same decision that was taken by the ANC will take the similar decision and beef up the structures, the leadership structures? We are told that no, the situation is not in the Free State is not as bad as in Gauteng and the KZN, following the performance that they dished out in last year's general elections.
Ishmael Mudiba, thanks so much indeed. We appreciate your time. That was my colleague Ishmael Mudiba at the venue where the ANC's top officials are meeting to discuss or engage with regional structures and branches in the 5 regions of the province today. And of course, as you had there, that meeting ending up tomorrow. Now to this, the Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, says the murder accused in the Philadelphia hospital incident is not a mental health patient, but rather a substance abuse patient. This after a patient was killed in an alleged altercation at the hospital in Denelton, Limpopo, with another patient. Motsoaledi says 4 patients were present in the ward at the time of the incident. Meanwhile, the Deputy Minister of Police, Polibu Shielo, says the police are investigating the incident.
The case that we're investigating is murder. So we've opened 3 cases in this instance. The first one is murder and the 2 are attempted murders.
This is the most bizarre story I've ever heard of for my whole 42 years in this profession. I've never heard or seen something like this. This is bizarre, it's bizarre, it's bizarre. And the explanations are very woolly and still as clear as mud. But in short, there are 4 psychiatric patients in a ward. 2 of them are not really psychiatric patients in the true sense of the word. It's substance-induced psychosis. They took crystal meth. And those of us in this profession who know, people who take crystal meth, they really go seriously psychotic. In our language, they are mad, as mad. And they are known to be extremely violent. So this man was admitted on the 5th. And we understand early hours of this morning, he woke up to attack the other 3 patients. The other 2 were able to run away and escape. And the deceased is the one who remained in the ward. The most bizarre part is the behavior of the security officers who were called here, because there are security officers in this hospital. They came in, but I understand they actually ran out of the ward. They are armed. This man was not armed. He was just hitting the deceased with everything at his disposal.
All right, now let's have a look at stories that made headlines in the Sunday newspapers. Let's start with Sunday Times. Sunday Times, they're headlining this story, Kodongwana's vet gamble. The story written by Keifas Hosana and Khotadzo Madisa. Half percentage point rise mooted for this and next 2 years. Sunday Times reporting Finance Minister Enoch Gonogwana is standing his ground on a tax increase, insisting he needs the extra revenue to fund the COVID grant and ruling out any other form of a tax hike when he presents his delayed budget on Wednesday. Government insiders there saying the Government of National Unity's clearinghouse set up to mediate disputes among parties in the GNU has agreed to a smaller VAT hike after his proposed 2% point increase was rejected by the DA, which said it would hurt the poor most. That's the leading story in the Sunday Times. And the next headline is found in the Sunday Tribune. Here's a story by Bongani Hans, headlined Pada legal action looms. Parties prepare to approach Concord to have Farmgate report declassified. Police Minister Senzo Mkunu's decision to classify the latest report on the Pada scandal involving President Cyril Ramaphosa's police bodyguards might end up in a legal wrangle. The African Transformation Movement, Umkhonto weSizwe Party and the EFF are preparing to approach the Constitutional Court to overturn the classification. Mkunu classified the report, which was released by the Independent Police Investigative Directorate in 2023, after it investigated police conduct on using state resources to track down suspects who broke into Ramaphosa's Para game farm in 2020. You will find full details of that story in the Sunday Tribune. Moving on to the next newspaper headline is found in the Sunday World. It's written by Situma Stone, headlined ANC Big Wigs Gun from Mbalula. Show us proof. That's to Mbalula, as the Sunday World reports that SG's bid to have ANC big guns charged falters. Further reporting that the 5 ANC heavyweights who have been hauled before the disciplinary hearing on various charges have thrown down the gauntlet to Secretary General Fikile Mbalula to prove that he obtained authorization from the National Executive Committee to charge them. Zizi Godwa, David Matlobo, Obed Babela, Malusi Kigaba there and Cedric Frolic have submitted that contrary to charge sheets, there was no resolution taken by the NEC to discipline them, suggesting that Mbalula acted on his own. That story found in the Sunday World, and those are the stories making headlines in the Sunday newspapers. Now, the week ahead continues after this short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back and thanks for staying with the week ahead. NUMSA says the mooted 2% VAT increase is likely to cripple the working class, coupled with the 12.7% electricity tariff hike that takes effect in April. This came under the spotlight in Bloemfontein, where more than 400 members of the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa in the mining, security, motor, plastics, energy and bus sectors met for the NUMSA Shop Stewards Council meeting. The meeting was looking into challenges facing the sector in order to come up with strategies to tackle them. Workers have been encouraged to support the national health insurance in order to see universal access to healthcare being realized in South Africa.
You can see everything is breaking asunder at the level of deindustrialization, collapse of infrastructure, and it points to one thing: you can't replace a state that intervenes in the economy. We obviously reject VAT. That is added to the poor, because we are basically people who are taking from nothing must now fund a program that is not helping them. Our people need jobs, our people need food, our people need a land, and the ANC government must move very quick to address those issues. Otherwise, it will be voted permanently out of power.
Now, Electricity and Energy Minister Hossein Ramakgopa plans to visit some of Eskom's power stations in the coming week in an effort to get to the bottom of the current setbacks that have led to a series of rolling blackouts. The setback has been attributed to the loss of 2,700 megawatts in generation capacity at Kusile and Kubek power stations. The power utility hopes to suspend the current stage 3 of load shedding on Monday. Minister Ramakgopa held a media briefing also blaming the setbacks on non-technical issues that he says will be investigated at the power stations in the coming week.
Electricity and Energy Minister Hossein Ramakgopa has identified a concerning pattern at some Eskom power stations that needs urgent attention. The minister has now set his sight on locating the issue at the center of the recent rolling blackouts. He's confident that once addressed, the country will remain firmly on the road to achieve prolonged power supply. Ramakgopa says he wants answers as the cause is not technical.
We know that we've got both the capacity and the faculties to resolve this question, this problem that is confronted. We are confronted with, and I'm confident we'll do that. But now we are going through very turbulent waters, adverse headwinds. I can tell you a significant number of these, nothing to do with the technical issues. The issues as Matimba and Letao. And then we have a second bite, Majuba and Camden. And then we come to Kubek and then Kusile. I want to argue those are not issues of a technical nature.
Eskom has a generation recovery plan in place that has seen heightened maintenance at some power stations, which the power utilities CEO Den Marokane says is necessary with winter fast approaching. He says since Friday, some units have come back online.
Since then, we've returned 3,200 megawatts by this morning. So quite a number of units came back, including those two Kusile units were back by last night at 10 p.m. And this morning, further units came through to give us that reduction in the unplanned losses. We're now sitting at about 4,500. Tomorrow we expect some 750 megawatts of capacity to come back, and the remaining 2,800 by Monday morning. This will include the return on Kubek Unit 2 that's been on breakdown since last week Sunday.
As the minister seeks accountability, the board's chairperson Mteto Nyati says they too are concerned about the regression picked up at some power stations. The board will now activate the work of the Business Operation Performance Committee to look at the incidents and report back.
We've got a committee of the board called the Business Operation Performance Committee, led largely by engineers, and also we've got a number of accountants in that committee. It is the committee that is going to be helping us to look at all of these incidences and start to look at the patterns and get to the root of what are the systemic issues. What are the systemic issues that we are facing right now? And those systemic issues will typically be in the areas of process, of systems, and most importantly, around people.
Eskom will also be looking to the budget on March 12th for relief which will help stabilize their operations.
Our program has been a 3-year debt relief program. 2 years of it have gone through. We are going into the last year. We know that government budget processing has been really a process of give and take, of balancing other needs. We are anxious to get a sense that gives certainty around how we'll deal with the last year of our debt relief program within what government can afford. As figure was 254 billion at the beginning of this 3-year cycle. We're now entering a phase where we need to be talking around, on the numbers that deals with the last tranche of about 70 billion rands or so. How in what format and over what time the state, the fiscus is able to support this. So we'll hear from the minister when he delivers the budget. Yeah.
The power utility says measures to help protect its facilities and network against the adverse weather conditions are continuing. Eskom will announce the winter plan at the end of March going into April, with units at Kusile expected to also be synchronized in time ahead of the winter peak. Maintenance will also remain heightened at some of these power stations in a bid to bring load shedding to an end. The minister will in the meantime be embarking on this accountability tour in the coming week. Katlego Logodi, SABC News in Pretoria.
Yeah, in fact, there's been an update on that story. Eskom saying that after the recovery of more than 3,000 megawatts of generation capacity and replenishment of sufficient emergency reserves in the past 44 hours, load shedding would be suspended today. They suspended it at 10 a.m. this morning. Now to this story. IF leader Velenkwesini Tlhabisa is currently delivering the keynote address at the IFP's Gauteng Extended Provincial Council meeting at the Brixton Multipurpose Centre in Johannesburg. Let's listen in.
Angibabingelela base Force Loras. Hola Force Loras, hola. Yeah, amaswidi ngiwaphethe ngizoqala ngeForce Loras. Firstly, Comrade Zandile, I want on behalf of the IFP to congratulate and wish well our women as we were celebrating the International Women's Day yesterday. Our women are pillars of our societies and our families. Without our women, we do not have a country. Most families survive and are supported by women and women alone. We therefore want to say happy belated Women's Day at an international level to all our women who are present here and those who remain behind to support our families and those who had to wake up and go to work even on a Sunday. Halala, bantu besifazane, halala. Halala, bantu besifazane, halala. Okay. Comrades, the last time when I was here in Gauteng, it was 14 April 2024 when we met in Germiston during the launch of our election campaign manifesto. Our slogan, which still remains true, was and still is, trust us, we work for you. Sethembe sisebenzela wena. During our manifesto launch here in Gauteng last year in Germiston Stadium and throughout the campaigns in Gauteng, we requested the people of South Africa and the people of Gauteng to drive and shoulder a massive campaign which we wanted to deliver two things. The first one, when we campaigned in Gauteng last year, we requested the voters to make the IFP to be the voice of the people of Gauteng in the Executive Council of the Gauteng government where decisions are taken. The second thing that we requested the voters to make the IFP to be the part of the National Cabinet of the government of South Africa where policy decisions are made. It will therefore be amiss of me not to thank you on behalf of the National Executive Committee of the IFP and all the people of goodwill in South Africa. Thank you, Comrade Gauteng, for the hard work and dedication that you gave to carry our campaign in this province and delivered our targets.
All right, IFP leader there, Velonkosi Tlhabisa, addressing the key, delivering the keynote address at the IFP's Gauteng Extended Provincial Council meeting at the Brixton Multi-Purpose Center in Johannesburg. And you might have heard him there, obviously wishing women a happy belated International Women's Day, and talking about their role in the communities and how important that should be celebrated indeed. And we will actually keep tabs on that story throughout the day. Now, as South Africa anticipates the delivery of its national budget, the health sector continues to face severe challenges. Despite the increasing number of medical graduates, a significant number remains unemployed, while public hospitals continue to operate under severe strain. This ongoing issue is largely attributed to chronic underfunding, budget misallocation, and systemic inefficiencies.
The healthcare system is facing a crisis, and yet a new generation of qualified doctors are being left out. More than 1,800 newly graduated doctors are unable to find employment.
Corruption has played a significant role in draining resources, with 24 billion lost between 2009 and 2013, and an additional 14.8 billion rands in healthcare spending currently under investigation from the COVID-19 period. A recent cessation of USAID funding, which previously contributed around 17% of South Africa's HIV response budget, has further constrained government finances, making it even harder to employ doctors.
The challenge that we are facing is that positions are there. They don't need to be created. They are there, but the challenge is that they are not funded. And you cannot employ somebody on a position that is not funded.
This has added increasing pressures on public hospitals.
Public hospitals are dangerously understaffed, leading to excessive workloads, burnout, and declining patient care quality.
With the national health insurance on the horizon, there's questions on whether the system can support government's ambition.
The government's inability to employ trained doctors under the current system casts serious doubt on its capacity to expand the healthcare workforce under the NHI. Without immediate action, the healthcare system risks further deterioration, ultimately making universal healthcare an unrealistic goal.
The Act itself, it introduces a different model of contracting healthcare providers compared to what we have now. So it may become a solution, it may not become a solution, but that is still to be seen. One cannot speak with confidence how the current situation is gonna impact the national health insurance moving forward, but we need to recognize that the contracting model is different, but also recognize that the frustrations of doctors being unemployed, some of them may opt to leave the country, and when we need them, they may not be available.
As the budget speech approaches, the question isn't just about numbers, but whether South Africa will invest in the future of its healthcare. Hasina Gori, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Let's stay with our story. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana is finally expected to table his budget speech on Wednesday in the National Assembly. The event had to be postponed a few weeks ago because of disagreements over a proposed VAT hike. The speech will provide an overview of the nation's financial situation, tax changes, spending plans for the next fiscal year, and the allocation of funds among the several branches of government and national departments. We now have Frank Blackmore, the lead economist at KPMG, Tshepo Mongwai, SABC News economics editor, who are on the teams, and Dr. Jose Letlape, a health activist, joining us here in studio to discuss what to expect. Gentlemen, thanks so much indeed for joining us. Frank, let me start with you. I mean, one of the main topics of discussion leading up to Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's 2025 budget speech has been the effects of tax increases and fiscal consolidation. What do you think will happen this week?
So there was a general feeling that South Africa has been taxed to about as much as we can be taxed. What does that mean? That means that if you increase the marginal tax rates any further on persons or businesses or whatever areas, you're going to also create negative effects. So basically, there's no room to tax South Africans further, and therefore the expectation is, and a lot of will be that, instead of increasing money to cover additional expenditures, we know that around 58 billion was required to cover additional expenditures, that there will be shifting around of budgets between various economic sectors, with some cuts being made in certain areas. So that's the expectation for this Thursday announcement in the budget.
Tshepo, let me come to you, and thanks for pulling off. I mean, you have been following this story. Has attention been paid to the need to prioritize infrastructure investment, wage bill management, and social spending from what you've been observing?
Yeah, good day to everyone. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the cornerstone of this budget, infrastructure spending or spending for development. That item, in fact, is going to be one of the items that is growing and much higher. I think at around 8%. So there is a massive resources that are actually going to be dedicated for development. I think over the medium term, about 3 years, the spending there, it's around R1 trillion. So there is priority, but of course, there is also consideration for the social needs in terms of social grants that government obviously wants to maintain. There are huge resources that are going towards there. And in fact, government made a priority that those frontline services included will remain protected. But you can see there are gaps, of course, in terms of the fiscal constraints that we are going through. And some of the gaps, of course, we've got a wage agreement that seems to have been agreed with the public sector union at around 5.5%. Now, if you look back, you realize that National Treasury has always relegated this to provinces, who has to, try to find money for that. And it has been very, very painful because they have to sacrifice some of the services that are regarded as frontline services in order to meet this. So it's very interesting to see how is government going to deal with this. Will they find resources within their fiscal expenditure, or are they going to continue to do the same thing and let the provinces find a way? But of course, it's very interesting with this one, with this delay in the delivery of the budget, because National Treasury has line of sight of some of the key economic data, like GDP that came out that came out last week, and of course we also had unemployment numbers that came out recently. So hopefully SARS has also been trying to look around, find money, and we could see some revisions on Wednesday with some of the projections that they've had.
Important point indeed. Dr. Letlape, let me just come to you. I mean, the growing number of unemployed physicians. You've seen my colleague Hasina Gori reporting in that story. I mean, it appears to be a cause for concern. In this context, what do you hope to hear in the budget speech regarding the unemployment of physicians?
It's very difficult to find a solution from a Minister of Finance during a budget speech for the solutions that we're talking about. Because as has been articulated, the issue of employment of doctors happens downstream, Ministry of Health and provinces. But it is quite sad when the Ministry of Health is not asking for employment of healthcare professionals to be prioritized. And it's not that the money is not there. The Ministry of Health does not think employing healthcare professionals is important. Let me give you an example. The current administration is spending millions of rands advertising NHI on television. Now, why would you want to advertise a government policy? That's never been done before. Now, that 20, 30 million rands that is being spent there could employ 20, 30 doctors. It could employ 50 nurses. It's because that is not priority. They will be given by the Minister of Finance conditional grants for NHI, which go into billions, which they've been given before for reinventing the wheel, trying a model of contracting that is not necessary to make the public sector efficient. But they'll be given those billions. So it's not that the money is not there. It's just that the public sector is not being prioritized. So there's a new model where cronies can make money that is being punted and promoted. When you look at our healthcare system, 86% of the population gets their healthcare from the public sector, delivered by employed healthcare professionals. 14% get it from the private healthcare system on a fee-for-service basis. When you promote contracting, you are promoting the private system over the public system that is the most efficient way of delivering healthcare, employing doctors. And that's the one that is not being funded, and we're punting something that is a nest egg for wastefulness and corruption. And I hope what the Minister of Finance will do is to ensure that under the current tax regimes, he gives SARS the money that is needed to improve collections under the current regime.
Let me bring Frank into this. I mean, Frank, how can we develop reasonable revenue projections to lower debt and build a completely self-sufficient economy? Just in relation to what Dr. Letlape has spoken about, the issues of unemployment, this one issue continues to haunt this country.
Well, I think I agree with the sort of statement made by the doctor that, you know, a budget doesn't have to be an excessive budget. In other words, a balanced budget is a budget where you spend the revenue that you collect. Why has South Africa for the last 10 plus years had a budget where they aim to spend more than they collect in the budget? That's one thing. Second thing, I think, and the doctor hinted at this as well, is where does the money go? So in the same way, so, you know, the problem is posed to us in simple economic terms to basically say we need extra money. Where are we going to get that from without cutting? The problem is we don't know where the money is going to in a lot of these cases. South Africa, I think, also has to look at expenditure on a department-by-department basis and prioritize that expenditure where the most impact is going to be made, and that impact needs to be measured according to the sort of beneficial outcomes for the country and its citizens, as opposed to certain individuals or certain projects that may not lead to those individuals. If you don't have enough money, you will know as well in your personal budget, you have to then start prioritizing expenditure items to those things that are necessary. And I think South Africa is in that condition now. We know we spend enough money and we raise enough tax revenues. As the doctor has said, we raise the same sort of tax revenues as a percent of GDP as many developed countries, as Australia, as Switzerland, as US, but we don't get the outcomes for that type of revenue raised, right? And that tells you the problem is not on the raising tax side, it's on the expenditure side, the application side for these taxes. And I think that needs a big review from government now. But I also think therein lies the solution to the current problems. If we direct money at the right areas to create, let's say, growth goals in the economy, and growth is important for a lot of reasons. You need to pull people into the economy, grow the tax base, etc., etc. But in order to grow, you also need a lot of other things. You need good, well-educated people to come into the economy. You need healthy people, which is why the health sector is right. You need safety and security so that people can travel to work and home safely enough. You need a lot of these additional things, and a lot of them rely on public services working properly. But I think if we are going to target this growth mandate, we look for expenditures that we can prioritize, and we deliver public services as we expect them based on the outcomes of those public services, then I think we can achieve that growth that we want.
Tsepo, let me come to you. I want us to talk about the nation's organizational capabilities. How would you say that relate to the budget postponement, as we have seen a couple of days ago?
Well, I think the postponement, of course, it stirred different feelings among the nations for many different reasons. Of course, people felt that it was wasteful expenditure. We know that the Auditor General is looking at that particular case to investigate in terms of that. But there are those who are saying this is indeed democracy at play, and I mean we've never been here before as a country. But of course, I think there are some important lessons that needs to be learned from this particular experience. We know that budget in terms of its finalization is the National Treasury that eventually decides what goes into it. Perhaps we could say there is a need to look at the budget process to see if, as much as we know that National Treasury gets the accolades internationally of having the most transparent budget in the world, but there are those who may differ, given that eventually what goes out into the budget in terms of its finality is the National Treasury that decides. Even cabinet ministers, in most instances, they can only make inputs into it, but they cannot decide. Of course, the same thing will play out this week, and I can assure you that cabinet ministers do not know what's going to be in the budget. They've left it to the National Treasury. There will be a bit of surprises here and there that will come out, and we know that the political party will express their displeasure on what eventually comes out. And by the look of things, it looks like, of course, we may have a mechanism that will be able to give us revenue immediately. It might be a fuel levy, and of course it might be a VAT, but by the look of things, there's a need to deliver money immediately.
Indeed. Dr. Letlape, I mean, you recently claimed that newly qualified physicians were being forced to emigrate or find employment in private practice because the government was not hiring them. What are the immediate and long-term consequences of this?
The long-term consequences that we'll never have enough human resources in our healthcare system. Remember, when you've trained, you got to get a job. And young people are very altruistic, and they want to serve society, and they want jobs in the public sector. Later on, they might choose to go private or go overseas. But when there are no jobs in the public sector, that's a dereliction of duty. That's a crime against our society. And that's what they are forced to contend with. And that should not be the situation. When I qualified as a specialist in 1988, when I qualified as a doctor, there were jobs in the public sector. It was just a question of where the jobs were. But all of us could be absorbed, and we needed more people. The need is greater than ever before. Let's find the resources. And I think what is missing is the fact that if it were up to me, I'd say, I'm not increasing budgets, I'm not increasing taxes, I want efficiencies. And I would say, as a Minister of Finance, I'm going to lead by example. I know my job. I don't need 2 deputies. I can do the job. And if I start with austerity in my own ministry, show the president where we could save. So with a budget of 2 deputy ministers and their offices, you could employ 1,000 nurses.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen. So instead of asking for more money, when we have a porous system with rampant corruption, we should clamp down on corruption. We should clamp down on inefficiency. Let me give you an example. I'm in health. If you made health a national competence and it was run by the Minister of Health, you'd get accountability. There'd be nothing that says, oh, I can't do that, or it's under provinces. But do you know the massive savings that would come with doing away with 9 MECs and political offices and political appointments within the same budget? We'd have enough to employ all these healthcare professionals and equip our hospitals and deal with the other issues. Fund the hawks. Corruption is a major problem. We can't keep asking for more money on the budget and becoming more corrupt, more inefficient, and more incompetent.
All right. Dr. Letlape, thanks so much for your time. Indeed, gentlemen, I appreciate your time. That was Frank Blackmore, the lead economist at KPMG, Tshepo Mongoi, SABC News Economics Editor, and Dr. Hosi Letlape, health activist, joining us to discuss what to expect ahead of the budget speech. Well, the week ahead continues after this short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with the week ahead. The athletes who will be representing the country at the 2025 Special Olympics World Winter Games have jetted off to Italy. The international multi-sport event that takes place every 4 years was last held in 2017. This event is known to be the world's largest event for athletes with intellectual disabilities. And for more on this, we are joined in studio by SABC News sports reporter Mahudi Molapo. A very good afternoon to you, Mahudi. Just for our viewers tuning into this who might not know, can you just break down the critical role SOSA plays in developing athletes for niche sports like figure and short track, speed skating? What's their mission in elevating these disciplines?
Because in townships, in most times, when we have if we have intellectual disabled people, they don't, they are not given much time for them for you to actually see that they are capable of something. Special Olympics take those people and then they train them in sports, different kinds of sports. And I think the reason why they do this is also to, transform them and not feel neglected, and also for them to be part of the community in kind of way.
And figure skating and short track speed skating are vastly different, aren't they? One prioritizes artistry and precision. The other one, raw speed and strategy. Why was this combined team uniquely positioned to qualify for the tournament when others couldn't?
Yes, I think the reason why we have those two was because we are going to the Winter Games, they are there for Winter Games. So this is part of the Winter Games. They skate on ice. So that is the reason why we have those two, figure skating as well as speed, short track speed skating. So if you see, figure skating mostly it's when you do your spins, they mostly dance, so they do the showcase.
I see that.
The spins, the jump, and then when you come to short track speed skating, that's where you see them racing. You see against each other, and you also see them showcasing the tight the tight turns and all of that.
And I'm sure there's a lot of training behind that. Right?
There is
Talk to us about that.
Yes, there is. So they do train at Northgate because there's ice skating there. And what I've heard is that you need to be disciplined to do all of this. Just like an athlete, you need to be disciplined. You need to be willing to do these things.
And this team is made up of athletes who won gold in 2017. Yes. Can you highlight how that experience shapes their leadership today, and what's different about their preparation now, given the unusual 6-year gap instead of the usual 4?
Yes. So what I've seen is that the 6 members that went, the 6 athletes that went to the Olympics, they are actually determined, because out of all of them, I'll just read their names. Terrell Sykes was in 4th place, as well as Kenneth Mukabo was also in 4th place in 2017. But then we have Bianca Basson, who won gold in 2017, as well as Charnel Swartz and Shane Bentley. So they have experience. They are already experienced. These ones, they'll be able to lead people such as Naledi Hlalele. Naledi is new in this, like she doesn't know anything. But because she's going there with the team that is very competitive and who won gold before, so I think it will just be, they will be able to win and come back with more gold.
Let's hope, and we can only wish them all the best. Thanks so much for coming through. Mahudi Mulabo is my colleague, SABC News sports reporter. Now, this is the week ahead. Thank you for being with us. We'll continue at the top of the hour to stay with us.
It was a political gimmick. Indeed, the company was established by myself, and I didn't hide it to anybody else.
Your headlines this hour: the city of Tshwane is investigating a conflict of interest case between Deputy Mayor Eugene Modise and a company he previously owned that has been awarded multi-million rand tenders by the city. 29 members of the Colombian armed forces who had been kidnapped by civilians under pressure from a guerrilla group in a southwestern area considered crucial for drug trafficking routes have been released. The Hamas delegation is in Cairo in Egypt to initiate talks for the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal. Welcome to the second hour of the week ahead here on the SABC News channel. We are live with you from our Johannesburg studios. You are still welcome to participate in our conversations. Give us a call on our studio number at 011-714-0680 or 81 or 82. It's an honor to have you with us at this hour. Another political storm is brewing in the city of Tshwane. The Deputy Mayor Eugene Modise faces a probe to determine whether he has tenders with the municipality. Opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, has urged the Tshwane Mayor, Dr. Nasipi Moya, and City Manager, Johan Medler, to look deeper into Modise's business affairs after the Auditor General's office flagged a security contract that's allegedly linked to Modise. While Tshwane Mayor Dr. Moya confirmed that investigations into Modise are taking place, Modise says he stepped down as director of the implicated security company and is not benefiting from it anymore.
Tshwane Mayor Dr. Nasipi Moya says following the AG report that was tabled to Tshwane in January, the city has tightened forensic investigations against several officials and companies. 39 criminal referrals have also been made. 70 cases have been referred to the Financial Disciplinary Board, and 3.6 billion rand in unauthorized, irregular and fruitless expenditure is being investigated. Dr. Moya says they want to see stronger consequence management to stop corruption in the Tshwane municipality.
Corruption is rife, and if you're not acting on financial misconduct, you're going to have a problem. The other one is our amount of irregular expenditure, unauthorized wasteful expenditure. And AG says we don't investigate quick enough. As a mayor, I'm dealing with a backlog of 1,000 forensic investigations that span back to 2012. So all of those we are now dealing with.
And it is on this reality of rampant corruption that the DA has called for a deeper probe into the business affairs of Tshwane Deputy Mayor Eugene Modise to determine whether he is financially benefiting from the municipality, as this is unlawful.
I wrote to the city manager requesting for investigation specifically into a watchman tender.
This tender was highlighted by the Auditor General in his management letter, and subsequently it also came to light that the Deputy Executive Mayor Eugene Modise is or was part of this company, although he's no longer a director of the company. But what was very concerning is that it seems as if this company owed SARS 59 million rand at the time when the tender was awarded, which then begs the question, how was the tender awarded to them if they could not have had a tax clearance certificate? I've asked for it to be sped up because it is against the Structures Act for a councillor to in any way financially benefiting from a city. So we're asking for a twofold investigation. Number one, look into the tender and how the tender was awarded to these various security companies, and then subsequently also, is the Deputy Executive Mayor and MMC of Finance financially benefiting from this tender?
Tshwane Mayor says Modise will not receive any special treatment, and a probe is already looking into the allegations.
We are saying we're not going to shy away when wrong things have been committed. We can't shy away, because if we do, we are contributing to the culture that AG has said to us is actually crippling this institution. On the issue of the Deputy Executive Mayor, and I think we have explained before that the allegation was put to us. We then asked him to respond, where he said that the appointment was obviously made way before he was a councillor or Deputy Executive Mayor, and that he had resigned when he became councillor. But we then said, obviously we're dealing with an issue of public trust here. It's not enough for me to say this is what he says, let's stop it there. We then said, no, let's proceed with the investigative report, which is already been instructed the officials to work on it. So there's no attempt not to investigate anything.
Responding to the calls of a probe into him, Tshwane Deputy Mayor Eugene Modise says he believes that this is all just a political gimmick.
It was a political gimmick. Indeed, the company was established by myself, and I didn't hide it to anybody else. I made a declaration immediately when I came into council. The company, I resigned from the company a year before I could be a councillor. Just around that time, they painted a picture because of the 300 million rands. It's for 22 companies and protection for the entire city.
But is this particular company, even though you're no longer the director, is it doing business with the state?
Yes, it's the contract lapsed now in February, but the invoices were ranging between 2 million, 2.5 when I left.
Do you owe SARS money that's linked to this particular company?
I don't owe SARS.
Are you in any form, perhaps with other companies that may have not been mentioned yet, are you involved with any other company that might be doing business with the state currently?
No, I've got businesses, but I don't have anyone that is doing currently a business with the government. But I've got companies. I'm a businessman.
The probe could have a serious impact on the power-sharing deal between Action SA, the ANC, and the EFF in Tshwane, as the mayor faces pressure to lead with integrity and not cover up for those who are in a coalition with her. Meanwhile, the DA also wants clarity on another security tender in Tshwane with over 40 million rand, this putting more pressure on Tshwane Mayor Dr. Nasipi Moya. Patricia Fasahi, SABC News in Pretoria.
Should whistleblowers be compensated for coming forward with information relating to corruption in state departments? This is one of the topics of discussion being held at the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group meeting today. SABC News reporter Abra Babia caught up with one of the delegates about this very issue.
Whistleblowing is a big issue. What we have discussed is still in work in progress. I think it's tomorrow that we come out with a resolution. But for now, we are listening to all parts, all agencies and stakeholders. views on this whistleblowing. So that's where we are now.
Doctor, I don't know if you can answer me because I know these sessions are closed, but I know that there's lots of talk around the payment or the reimbursement of whistleblowers and whether this is the right thing to do or not. I know different countries regulate this differently. Is that something that's part of the discussion in terms of how whistleblowers should they be compensated in any way, or should it be regarded as a citizen or integrity or ethical motive that drives them?
Yeah, actually, that is a big part of the discussion. You see, there's a dichotomy between the developed countries and the developing countries in terms of resource constraint. What I've noticed is that sometimes the developing countries copy or cut and paste what is in the developed country. Because the developed country, they have resources. So when you talk about whistleblower protection in the developed country, when you blow a whistle against a big criminal organization or individual, you can be removed from your location and put in another location, get to a new employment, get to a new ID, your family and your circumstances will be protected. We cannot do that in the developing country where resource constraints. If you blow a whistle in your community against a criminal, the criminals will come after you because they will not remove you. The government or the agency will not have the capacity to remove you from, let's say, Cape Town and put you in somewhere far away and give you new employment and new identity. We don't have that. But what you get is that they take this whistleblower act developed in developed countries and bring it to Africa to come and work with it. And it's not workable. So we need to fashion out, looking at our cultural, social, economic circumstances and see how we can protect our whistleblower, because we cannot replicate what the developed countries with huge resources are doing. Again, our culture is also different. You see, in Africa, particularly everybody knows everybody. So this issue about ethics comes in. If I know this person is a criminal, am I going to blow a whistle on him? No, unless, of course, I'm fighting him or I'm part of the criminal activity and I feel slighted. I feel they didn't give me my fair share before you blow the whistle. So again, we need to look at these nuances, the differences between cultures, to fashion out what a whistleblower protection will mean for resource-constrained countries like Africa and other developing countries, because we cannot have one-size-fits-all framework because the issues are different. So that is what I think we should look at.
We're staying with that story. Whistleblowers in South Africa face deadly risks. Speaking out can cost them their lives. Whistleblower activist Adila Tshwane says little is done to protect them.
You are 100% correct. With the current state of affairs with regard to the lack of protection of whistleblowers, it is most certainly a deterrent for whistleblowers to come forward. We've also seen whistleblowers that have fled our country fearing their lives. An example will be William Athol. So in order to protect the whistleblowers, the Protected Disclosure Act is insufficient. There needs to be more robust changes made with regard to the protection of the whistleblowers, which include criminalizing the persecution of whistleblowers. It also includes, providing some form of financial assistance when whistleblowers are being legally persecuted as well. What we've seen recently at the G20, it was very topical, the discussion about protection of whistleblowers. Resolutions have been taken, and there's been kind of an indication that there would be some attempt made to ensure those resolutions are implemented. And we're hoping that, these resolutions bring about change. But we also got to be cognizant of the fact that you've got developing countries and developed countries. We cannot simply just bring the legislation from a developed country. because there is resources that need to be put behind it.
Yeah.
But we cannot constantly be hiding behind the lack of resources and exposing the whistleblowers. There's got to be some resources over a period of time being allocated for the protection of whistleblowers.
Now, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mamoloko Kubayi, has expressed deep sadness over the murder of community activist Pamela Mabini in Gqeberha yesterday. Mabini played a vital role in supporting witnesses in the Timothy Omotoso rape and trafficking trial. She was shot and killed by unknown assailants in the driveway of her home. She was sitting in her vehicle parked in an open space next to her garage when she was gunned down just before 11 in the morning. SABC News reporter Lerato Fegisi joins us live for the latest. Lerato, a very good afternoon to you. The family has expressed how devastated they are and how it might even be difficult to heal from this hurt. How did they learn of her killing?
Well, a very good afternoon. We got to speak to a cousin of Mr. Gauteng, who is a cousin of Pamela, on Friday after she was gunned down, and I actually came through the police after the police got heard of the shooting happening in KwaZulu-Natal, and the family then obviously rushed to the house and were told that Pamela had indeed been shot outside her house. The cousin really expressed their sadness, saying that what makes it worse is that Pamela was the breadwinner of her household and that her death really is a shock and extreme sadness. Even when we were at the house speaking to the cousin inside, we could hear Pamela's mom literally weeping, devastated, heartbroken, completely devastated by her death. And the uncle was saying, rightfully so, because she was the breadwinner and perhaps the pillar to her family.
Okay, police saying when they arrived at the scene, they found the body of a woman in a buggy. Do we have any idea how they were alerted to the shooting?
It seems that they were alerted by people in the neighborhood. She stays in a township called KwaZulu-Natal, where the houses are quite close together. So if a gunshot does go off in the next house, chances are I'm going to hear it and obviously rush there. So we have heard that people from the neighborhood heard gunshots and then reported the matter to the police station, which actually isn't far from Pamela's house. I think from Pamela's house to the police station is literally about 5 minutes. So the neighbors heard the gunshot and the neighbor rushed to the police station to inform them that there was gunshot and there was a lady inside the vehicle, and the police rushed then to the scene to find Pamela's lifeless body inside that car.
And a case of murder has been opened and is under investigation as we are speaking. There's much speculation though on the motive, but let's stick to her activist role and what she's renowned for.
Absolutely. I think there's so much that can be spoken of Pamela and the role that she played in terms of social justice. She really wanted to be known as someone who was a humanitarian. There is an award here in Gqeberha called the Herald Citizen of the Year Award, which is awarded to people that go over the call of duty and do what they can to help the disadvantaged and marginalized. And she took it upon herself to connect sanitary towels and donate them to schools of underprivileged children. She also had a soup kitchen in KwaZulu-Natal where she would cook home beautiful meals and take them to street kids and take them to orphanages and take them to homes of safety to feed those that perhaps couldn't afford a good meal. So beyond just her being someone who was against GBV, she also really stood a lot about justice in terms of children, making sure that they have a plate of food, really passionate about donating sanitary towels to various organizations. And I think the humanitarian side is what's going to be missed most about her.
Let's talk about her interest and role in the Omotoso trial. What was it like, and had she received any threats against her life before? Do we know anything about that?
One of the journalists wrote in her WhatsApp status, I think on Friday, that were not for Pamela, there wouldn't be an Omotoso trial. And rightfully so, you remember that she was the whistleblower in the Omotoso trial. She was the one that got witnesses to come forward and give their testimony to police about what they allege happened under Mr. Omotoso many years ago. So she could be definitely seen as a whistleblower who was the one that brought the evidence, obviously via the witnesses, to the fore, and throughout the trial had been someone who showed her complete support to the witnesses, offering them support inside and outside of court, and standing also with the ANC Women's League, who also have shown their support of the witnesses in and outside court, where they were marching outside court with placards. Pam would be there standing in support and solidarity with the witnesses in the Motoso trial.
No doubt Pamela Mabini's murder must raise questions, Lerato, around the female victims of crime that she supported. Any idea on whether steps are being undertaken to secure their safety?
There are a lot of speculations really around Mabini's death, and a lot of people, naturally as human beings, when someone does pass on, people are going to gather their own opinions. But I think just to obviously ensure that we as journalists keep it ethical as well, it's really difficult to insinuate or even speak about what could be the motive behind her death, and rather leave it to the police to investigate. And the police have just said that let's rather leave the matter in their hands and allow them to do a proper investigation, do proper arrests, so that those that committed this hideous crime are brought to book.
And you've been following this story since the start. Lerato, just talk to us about your personal encounters with Pamela Mabini. How were you communicating? How was she when you had those exchanges at the court?
Oh, absolutely. Such a warm person, always so kind. She had this term that she referred everyone to. She would call, whether you're male or female, but she would call you Maro. It was a nickname that she used, I think, to kind of give a personal touch to every person that she had. And she had such a warm nature. Just looking through Facebook, sentiments coming from as far as Johannesburg and Cape Town and Durban, all just saying how devastated they are at her, because she was such a warm person. You'd meet her and she would give you a big hug, and then she would tell you the latest gossip happening in PE and what the it word is on the street, and also speak about her work that she's doing, how after she's talked to you, she's going to go and pick up some pads and drop them in Zwide or drop them in KwaZulu, how she really wanted to try save the world. I think in her own heart she really believed that she could save the world and really save children that were marginalized. So a warm, affectionate, kind, passionate, determined, unshakable young woman who was so really a fearful person, who really faced crime head on and was not scared to bring those in authority to truth, and spoke truth to power a lot, and passionate about making sure that those that commit crime in whatever act are brought to book.
And how is the community reacting to this devastating loss, Lerato?
It's really has been, I've never actually seen so many people, like I said, from all walks of life, reaching out to Pamela's family and expressing their sadness at her death. The community of KwaZulu is absolutely shaken, because she would go outside of KwaZulu and donate sanitary towels, but more than anything else, she would also walk around KwaZulu and find kids that didn't have clothes. One of our colleagues was actually saying that just a few hours before she died, she was packing her old clothes and saying that she's going to go actually spend the afternoon donating her clothes to old children's home where kids didn't have clothes. So that was the kind of person she was. She took the little that she had, or the lot that she had at times, and just gave and gave and gave and gave without holding back. So the community is devastated. Someone also wrote that I tweeted, I'm thinking about now, someone said, the children that Pamela used to take care of have lost the most. That yes, everyone else speaks of a loss, and everyone has got a right to say, and rightfully so, speak about the loss of Pamela's life. But the young children who looked to her for a breakfast, who looked to her for a lunch, who looked for her for a full meal, have been the greatest losers in Pamela's death.
And just finally, I know it's still early days, Lerato. Do we know of any memorial service and funeral service arrangement as yet?
It's still quite early because it happened on Friday, but Pamela's family, Mr. Katlamba, has informed the journalists that as soon as they have dates, I'm sure to be this week, they will get the media know, and will they also inform us of any other, whether it's a march or anything they're planning to have as a family memorial service, and the funeral, they'll communicate that to us timelessly.
Lerato, thank you. The devastating story, the SABC News reporter, Lerato Fekisi there. While the week ahead continues after this short break, do stay with us. Welcome back. In a world where connections matter, a new platform is emerging to link South Africans and like-minded individuals globally. Imagine a space where entrepreneurs, innovators, and leaders can collaborate, share opportunities, and drive economic progress with purpose and pride. It's called the Leer Network, and it's set to revolutionize the way we do business and connect with each other. With a strong focus on community innovation and growth, this platform is poised to become a game changer for South Africans and friends of South Africa around the world. Now, joining me via Teams is Nick Latoff, co-founder of the Leer Network. Nick, welcome to Week Ahead. We are excited to have you share more about this innovative platform and what it means really for South Africans and the global community. Perhaps let's start here. Can you just tell us what inspired you to create this platform?
Sure, and thanks so much for having me on and sharing the story. So, previously I built a business. It was a shoe company. It was called Veldskern. And, it was during those years where we built that company that I recognized firsthand how amazing South Africans are on a global scale. And I always had it in the back of my head that, if there was a way that we could connect everybody, we could build a real, kind of network of opportunity, but bigger than what we realize. And, at the beginning of 2024, I wrote a post on LinkedIn. It was straight after, I remember it very clearly, it was straight after the December holidays. And I said, South Africans are South Africa's best export. And the post blew up. Everyone, was messaging me, commenting on the post. And I thought, this is really interesting that people are responding this way. Yeah. And I thought, let me talk a little bit more about this. And I continue to talk about how South Africans are South Africa's best exports. And there is this potential that, with a million South Africans that have moved abroad, imagine we could create this network of opportunity where we help each other. And there's something very different about South Africans where South Africans, if you've moved abroad, you're still South African. That never leaves you. Yeah. We all have this shared heritage and this shared connection, no matter how long you've been out of South Africa. So I continue to talk about it on LinkedIn. But what was happening while I was posting about it on LinkedIn was every day I would have 60 to 70 messages in my inbox, locally and South Africans abroad, sharing the sentiment, saying to me, I'd have a guy that would message me from Australia and go, Nick, you know what, we've been here for the last 30 years. We have relationships with all the retailers in Australia that we've spent a lot of time developing. Send us opportunities, send us brands and products from South Africa, and we'd be happy to, help them get into Australia. And it wasn't just Australia. It was Australia, it was New Zealand, it was Dubai, it was the US, it was South America, it was everywhere. Yeah, interesting. And it was absolutely fascinating. And then I thought, let me put it to the test. And there were incredible South Africans in the US that said the same thing to me. And I would connect them with guys locally and just do an introduction. And I realized then very quickly how fast the right connection could accelerate somebody's business or life or career. Because at the end of the day, it's not what, it's not how, it's not where, but who that makes the biggest difference. Yeah. It's all about who you know. Yeah. And what we're saying is, there are South Africans in every corner of the world, right? There's not a country you're not going to find a South African in that is not willing to help another South African. That's true. And our job is then to bring everybody together through the Leer Network to say, you know what, you've just launched a sunscreen brand. Let us introduce you to, Philip, who is in Dubai, who has relationships with a lot of the right guys over there. Yeah. Something that would usually take you 3 to 5 years, to get into, and let's accelerate your business. And it really is, it's the center of everything we do is connecting, Peter with Philip, who has developed something really interesting. And that's the center of what we do. There's a lot more layers to it. There's a lot of interesting things that we've seen while building the Leer Network over the last couple of months. One is how amazingly talented South Africans are. And not just that, but the world is recognizing how talented South Africans are. Yeah. And we see it on a weekly basis, how many companies around the world are outsourcing, to South Africa. So guys are sitting in South Africa and working for companies abroad and exporting the talent. And we see that as a major opportunity. And if we could do it where it's a South African business abroad, and we're saying to them, think of us back home. Let's get our talent and let's connect our talent with the world. So it really is. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, that's you answering all my questions I have for you. but let me ask you this. Nick. I mean, how would you describe the Leer Network and what sets it apart from other business networking platforms?
Very good question. And there are a lot of really good networks out there, and we're not saying don't belong to those. What we're doing is, first of all, we're taking the best of all of those and we're applying it with the South African flavor and a South African twist and a South African identity. But not only that, we are very, very, very active within the network to create impact and results. So an example of that is, I'll give you two examples of that. One is we are training team members up where their specific role is to look for opportunities to connect people to create business. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is we're using really clever technology that will automatically go, you know what? Peter over there would really do well in being introduced to Adrian, who is sitting in London right now. We've got some really clever tech that we're using. And at the center of all of this is an impact tracker. So on a weekly basis, we are tracking the impact. So we want to know how many jobs are being created, how many deals are being done, how many businesses are being started. And that is how, the founders internally are going to know whether we're a success or not. Yeah. And so far, we haven't had our official launch yet, but we've been running and building for a good couple of months. But our official launch is in the week ahead. Okay. But the amount of impact already that we've seen on a weekly basis has been incredible, and we're still small. We decided to take only a certain amount of members in initially, so that we could control it in the sense of having conversations with everybody going, what is it that you need? You being a South African sitting in Florida in America, what is it that you need? You being a South African sitting in Costa Rica or sitting locally in Johannesburg, what is it that you need? And we spent a lot of time having these conversations one-on-one and in groups with all the members to get a real understanding of what everybody needs. And we're using that as a framework to build the Leer Network. So we have all of this information now. We are going to execute on making sure that there's so much value created from this, and that South Africa as a whole sees and builds all of that value and all of those opportunities.
Can you walk us through some of the key features of the Leer Network, such as business directory, job portal, and social platform? Can you just walk us through that?
Yes, sure. So one thing I need to be very clear about is none of us founders have ever built a network. So we've been super transparent with everybody, saying we don't fully know how this is going to look, but as we grow and as we learn and as we get the feedback, we know what to implement. So right now we're about to launch a brilliant tech platform which will allow everybody to interact and have different categories within the platform. And an example of that is leads and needs, right? So you're part of the Leer Network, and you really need an introduction to somebody at Walmart because you have got a really incredible product that you think would do well there, right? You put that into the leads and needs section, and somebody will know somebody who has the right connection. So we have the leads and needs, which is very powerful. What that means is that whatever it is that you need, pop it in there. We've got somebody on our side that constantly manages and looks at that and goes, okay, I'm gonna actively look for somebody that can help solve that. Then obviously we have the business directory. We have events that are going to be taking place. Our first one being this coming Friday in Cape Town, which is the official launch. We have knowledge sharing. So there's going to be a lot of knowledge sharing sessions because we know, having built this for the last couple of months, we know how many amazing South Africans have built incredible businesses, not just building businesses, but have a lot of interesting experience in different fields that can share that knowledge and save people, within the network, other people so much time and so many school fees.
And Nick, you talk about, let's talk about the launch. I mean, what are your expectations for the number of users and engagement on the platform during the launch phase?
So that's a really interesting question, because listen, we've been blown away from the beginning, and right now we're at capacity for the launch. So very quickly, within a couple of days of announcing that there's going to be the launch and saying, come and celebrate with us, we hit, I think it was close to, I think we're sitting at about 420 people that signed up to come physically to the launch. And this is not just South Africans in Cape Town. This is South Africans coming from all over the world, right? We know of many South Africans that have flown in. We're seeing a lot of them this coming week from different corners of the world to come and join us there. Then, the other side of it is we have a wait list of people wanting to join the Leer Network, which is sitting at a good couple of hundred people wanting to join within the Leer Network. So, that's the launch is going to be about a couple of things. One is we're obviously going to share our entire vision with how the Leer Network is going to look in the future, what we're building. We're going to launch the website, and we're going to talk about our first international chapter, which is going to be London. And we're using London because it's for us it makes sense. We have a lot of members already in London, and we're going to use that and get it right over the next couple of months to build a blueprint of how the Leer Network chapters are going to look around the world.
All right.
Nick, yes, and then we have a lot of amazing speakers that are going to be there. We've got messages from Bruce Whitfield, Bob Skinstad, John Sani. We have amazing entertainment, and it's a brilliant evening of connection. But also wanting people to walk away doing deals and doing business and building their own personal networks.
Okay, Nick, thanks so much. We appreciate your time and all the best ahead of the launch. We really appreciate your time. That was Nick Lutov, co-founder of the Leer Network. Now, former President Thabo Mbeki has again emphasized a need for South African government to engage the U.S. administration with the aim of improving relations. The former president says the Afrikaners who have issues to raise must know solutions will not come from the United States of America. Speaking to international news editor Sophie Mukwena, Mbeki has commended Namibians for electing a woman president.
I was very, very happy that, first of all, SWAPO nominated her as your presidential candidate, and indeed that she then won the election. And very, very, very pleased that indeed the courts, when the matter was challenged, the courts have decided that she was properly elected. I've known her for many years. I knew her when she was a little girl, because when she came into exile to Lusaka, she was still very young. So in a sense, she's grown up in front of us. So I think I know something about her enough to have the confidence I have in her, that indeed she will discharge her responsibility as a president of Namibia properly. Bearing in mind also that she's the first woman president we have in our region. West Africa beat us to this. And I think she's the only woman president on the continent at the moment. So she also carries that additional burden, not only to make a statement about Namibia, but also make a statement about the capacity of women, that they are as good as any man. And she will demonstrate it in the manner in which she will lead Namibia. I'm very, very, very pleased that she has won. We will attend the inauguration. I told her when we went to bury the late President Sam Nujoma that I'd received the invitation to come to the inauguration, that I was definitely coming. Couldn't possibly miss it. Really just to say to her, we're all of us with her to make sure she succeeds in what will be an important task.
Dr. Pumpzile Mlambo, when I spoke to her earlier on, doing a follow-up of what she said inside there in relation to how women have regressed, and almost looking at the largest economy in the world, America. I know I spoke to you 2 weeks ago about the relationship between South Africa and America. It looks like it's not getting better. And now some, not all, Afrikaners in the country, you look at AfriForum, Solidarity, going abroad, talking about how South Africa is sidelining or marginalizing the Afrikaner community.
You know, Sophie, the first thing I'd like to say is that when I look at the things that you are raising, one of the first things that comes to me to mind is that we must respect the fact that the government you have in the United States now is a democratically elected government of the people of the United States. I think we've got to respect that you're not just dealing with anybody who's saying whatever, you are dealing with a properly elected representative of the people of the U.S. As you know, we've got a particular historical relationship with that population, which was very much part of with us during the course of that struggle. So I think what's happening demands that we should re-engage properly. I'm quite certain that if we engage properly with this government of the U.S. led by President Trump, elected by the people of the United States, and discuss all whatever matters concern them about South Africa, it will be possible to sort those matters out. It's also very important that we talk to our Afrikaner colleagues here to say if there are problems in this country, they will never be solved in Washington, never, ever. Those problems will be solved here. And one of the things that we must avoid at all costs is to communicate a message as South Africans that you can't carry out this process of the transformation of the country. Because to transform, then you offend one section of the population, and therefore don't transform. You can't have that. There must be transformation. There must be a removal of the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. That must be acted upon. And so it's necessary for us, I will definitely talk to this African leadership to say if they have problems, they know where to go in the country in terms of let's find a solution to those problems. They won't help them to go to the United States. And I'm saying with regard to relations between South Africa and the U.S., I am sure the engagement between ourselves and the U.S. government about South Africa will produce the right answers.
And finally, the Ukraine war, I spoke to you when it started. You were quite clear that a peaceful resolution is the only way. Are we getting there?
I think the positions taken by President Trump on this matter are correct when he says this war must end, and therefore undertaken this task to communicate with both with President Putin and President Zelensky. Let's move forward as quickly as possible to end the war. That is a correct position. I support President Trump very strongly on that. I think he's taken a very important initiative, and I hope that everybody, the Russian Federation, Ukraine, the West Europeans, NATO, the EU, all of these people, and us on the continent, and the rest of the world, I think we should support that, because it looks to me like this is the quickest way we'll move towards a resolution of that problem.
And for more on this, we bring in SABC News International News Editor, Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, a very good afternoon to you. You attended a very high-powered Women's Day event yesterday, and indeed, you got to meet and talk to some very influential women in society. Could you start by giving us a snapshot of the 14th International Women's Day Dialogue hosted by the Thabo Mbeki Foundation? What was the central theme, and how did it frame discussions around global challenges facing women?
I think we are aware that this is an annual event, International Women's Day. We know that it's a UN event. It's in the UN calendar in March, while in South Africa you have Women's Day in August. But when you look at the International Women's Day, it looks at what's happening around the world. And they had invited the former executive director of the UN Women, and who is also the former deputy president of the Republic of South Africa, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, to share her thoughts where we are. And she made a very important example in terms of what's happening in the U.S. and how that can influence other countries. We know that President Trump has strong views on issues of reproductive rights and certain laws in that country aimed at empowering women. And therefore, there was a view that his views in the administration of the U.S. right now, women are likely going to regret when you are opposed these progressive laws and policies aimed at empowering women in the United States, for example. And she made an example of what transpired at some point in time under Ronald Reagan when on issues of women, in this case the Republicans again, and what happened during Bill Clinton's tenure, which coincided with the Beijing conference 30 years ago, how the Democrats tried again to undo that legacy of Reagan in terms of women, or the Republicans in terms of the gains made by the women. And now again, here we are, we find ourselves where the Republican president is undoing what the Democrat president who left office, Joe Biden, had done to empower women. So for me, that was one very important lesson for me also as a journalist, because institutional memory, when you cover news, is quite important because you'll understand how the world is evolving. Then, of course, the former South African president talking more also about a discussion by two Americans in terms of one Black African American speaking to others, talking about the confidence of being themselves and saying this is a moment for South Africans or Africa, for Africans to believe in themselves, and women in particular. So you can see that there was that attempt to say what's happening around the world affects us. But also the guest speaker, the Auditor General, Tsakani Maluleke, a very, very powerful message in terms of what must happen in South Africa in relation to governance, so that we don't come and say there's no money, you have to increase that. What are the issues that are supposed to be done to ensure that there's money? Two, what is it that must be done to ensure that the lives of ordinary South Africans do change in relation to implementation of progressive policies and laws, and pointing out that skills is very critical.
And let's shift our focus, Sophie, to Namibia. And I think this is quite critical. The governing party of Namibia has elected a woman president, Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah. Inauguration, of course, on the 20th of this month. It's the first time a former liberation movement, in this case SWAPO, has elected a woman president. Is this where the continent is heading, in your view? You've been covering these stories for a very long time. Just talk to us about that.
There has been a criticism that the liberation organizations, they don't want to transform, they themselves, in terms of the top leadership. For example, an organization such as the ANC that was launched in 1912, more than 100 years since it was launched, we've never seen a woman ascending to the presidency, either as a deputy or the president. Now, SWAPO is much younger. ANC is the oldest organization on the continent. Now, the younger organization, a neighbor, a friend to the ANC in the SADC region, part of the frontline state movement, they have led the way in terms of electing a first woman president leading SWAPO. And in 2 weeks, she is going to be inaugurated as the president of Namibia, because she is currently president-elect after elections. And therefore, she is going to be the most powerful woman in the world, having executive power and political power. This is where the continent is, and I can tell you, I'm sure other countries, women are watching and saying, we can do the same. And we are likely going to see women in different parts of the continent challenging the highest office in relation to political party, particularly from the liberation organizations.
In fact, I wanted us to talk about that, Sophie, in terms of the symbolic or practical significance this leadership milestone hold for women's rights in Namibia, and how it might influence political participation across the continent, especially female participation.
We will be watching, that Tanzania will be going to elections this year. Mm-hmm. So I think many people will be watching to see whether the Tanzanians will have confidence in the party that's likely going to put forward a woman candidate. But also, Chama Pinduza itself. We know that the president of Tanzania became the president of the Republic of Tanzania because of the passing of the president of Tanzania. But you still have to test the support in terms of electoral strength. And therefore, that is why Dr. Dlamini Zuma was saying to me yesterday that, yes, we've had women who are leaders, but some of them came because they had to step in and fill the gap. The first one that was properly elected through a vote as a head of state was Johnson Sirleaf in Liberia. This will be the second time we see a woman occupying that high office in the land elected by the voters. So people will be watching Tanzania. And I think from there, all other countries on the continent that will be going to elections, people will be watching whether we are likely to see the same happening, particularly in the SADC region. As going forward, we'll have many countries going to elections and those liberation organizations electing new leadership.
Just finally, Sophie, and I think this is one important question that everyone is asking. I mean, what obstacles might the new Namibian president face as a woman in this role? And how do this reflect broader systemic barriers discussed at the dialogue that you attended yesterday?
There will be a pushback in terms of patriarchy and sexism, but based on what many people are saying, for example, the former South African president saying she has been there for quite a long time. They saw her grew up as a formidable leader. She's a former Foreign Affairs Minister. She has engaged with many heads of state and government for quite a long time. It will be interesting to see how is she going to handle perhaps a pushback. But also generally, like any other leader, because this is about leadership, women are leaders like any other person can be a leader. How is she going to handle the cries of the Namibians who are saying, after independence, our lives haven't changed much? That will be a critical issue, and that's the question I asked her when she was at the polling station during elections, particularly looking at issues that are related to beneficiation and use of minerals on the continent. She was quite strong, and it's something that will be monitoring what she said on that day, whether she is going to implement those decisions or policies.
Sophie, thank you. That was SABC International News Editor, Sophie Mukwera. Now, that's how we wrap up today's show, The Week Ahead. Thanks so much for joining us indeed. SA Today up next at the top of the hour from myself, Margarita Mutlawe, as well as the rest of the Week Ahead team. Thank you for watching. Take care.